it does seem to me to really be evidence of an area where Donald Trump has not learned the lessons that he needs to learn. But whatever, we can get into that in a second. Of course, I am talking about the feud between Donald Trump and Thomas Massie.
So recently, Donald Trump called out Thomas Massie twice on social media over apparently the CR. Thomas Massie voted no on the CR that continued a lot of the Biden era spending. And Trump called him out. So Dave Smith on his podcast goes through a few points about why not only why he thinks Trump is wrong about that issue, but why he thinks it was a serious miscalculation. So let's get into that and watch.
Thomas Massie, of course, for a little bit of background on this, Thomas Massie and Donald Trump really had a pretty bad falling out in 2020 when Thomas Massie was the only member of Congress who was standing up to the fiscal insanity of the year 2020, which is, of course, by the way, he was totally vindicated on. But he was insisting that it was crazy to spend these. It was like these $2 trillion spending bills in the middle of COVID. He was saying the whole thing is nuts. The lockdowns are nuts. These spending bills are nuts. And it's going to destroy the dollar, result in inflation. Ended up looking pretty good in hindsight. Pretty solid prediction. And for being the best member of Congress, Donald Trump, smeared him, sent his supporters to attack him. Essentially the same thing is happening again.
So yeah, Dave's absolutely right. In 2020, Massie was one of, I think, 4 congressmen to oppose the CARES Act, a huge pork barrel spending bill in the wake of the COVID regime and all of the, handouts and entitlements that came with it. So Dave's exactly right there.
The Congress is trying to jam through another insane spending bill that will increase the debt, increase the deficit. And Thomas Massie was one of the few voices saying no. And Donald Trump flipped out on him. I think that this is on the policy of it, Donald Trump is dead wrong. And it's terrible. And then I think on the politics of it, I think it's also terrible. So just a really horrible move by Donald Trump. And he's splitting his own base. Maybe I'm not saying splitting right down the middle. Obviously, Donald Trump is the most popular Republican figure in the country, but he is picking a fight with someone in Thomas Massie who I think has a more loyal base of support than Donald Trump realizes. It's so infuriating, dude, because that's what they said to Thomas Massie in 2020. They said, hey, there's a pandemic, dude. We can't deal. I get your point, but there's a pandemic. We can't deal with that now. There's always an excuse for why now. This is like if Washington, D.C. had a tagline, it would be now is not the time. Now was never the time. I remember right after 9/11 when heroes like Harry Brown and Ron Paul would point out why we have this fight with the terrorists to begin with and what the beef is. They'd say, now is not the time. Now's not the time. We were just hit. You know what I mean? And after the 2008 crisis, when people would point out how the government's in collusion with the big bank built up this housing bubble, well, now's not the time. We're in this great financial recession. Now's not the time. It was never. Okay, when Obama was being pressured to prosecute George W. Bush's administration for war crimes, now's not the time to look backward. Now's the time to move forward. Now's not the time. Now's not the time. It's never the time,
Yeah, it's never the time to cut spending in Washington. This is a bipartisan effort to expand government, and that's why every single presidential administration has essentially outspent the previous one in, I think, my entire lifetime, and that trajectory keeps going on. There's never a time to do the right thing in Washington, regardless of who's involved, regardless of which administration's in power. And Massie calls that out straight up.
You know what I mean? It's never the time to do the right thing. Somehow it's always the time to do the wrong thing. And again, it's just, I don't know what else to say. I don't know in the world of politics when anything could ever be made more clear than it is made clear right now that the Republican Party is a big government socialist party. There's, as you pointed out, Rob, you have all the stuff with Doge. Doge is popular. The American people are looking at the swamp in a way they never have before. The corporate media that would be known for always in these moments fear-mongering, what a government shutdown will do, what will happen if these things are cut. No one's watching the corporate media anymore. They have no power to really fuck with Donald Trump or his agenda in any way. And so now when you have Donald Trump at his most popular, you have the idea of cutting government spending at its most popular. And you have Republican control of the House and the Senate and Donald Trump in the White House. Like, if now's not the time, just someone please explain to me when is going to be the time.
Yeah, this is so right. And Trump's first administration was the same. If you remember, there was all these efforts to repeal Obamacare in the last year of Obama's presidency that were vetoed, each one by him. But Republicans would not send an Obama veto or Obama repeal to Trump when Trump got into office. He wanted to, tailor it to his own interests. So you're seeing the same thing. Now is not the time.
When is going to be the time to actually cut some spending if now is not the time? And it reveals, it's like, in this moment, who's actually serious about cutting spending? Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. And that's pretty much it. And the rest of them all just pretend. And I mean, if there is one lesson, and I've been saying this for so many goddamn years at this point, but if there is one lesson that the MAGA Republicans need to learn, that somehow they cannot learn, even it's not rocket science. But when you talk about draining the swamp is the power that DC has. And the power that DC has is how much money they spend. Literally all of the money spent, as Elon Musk loves to share this video of Milton Friedman breaking it down perfectly, right? The real tax is government spending. No matter what they're spending the money on, no matter how they raise the money, government spending is the tax, right? It is, because either the only ways they can get the money are either to tax you for it, to borrow the money, which is just a promise to tax you in the future, or to print the money, which is just a tax in a different form. It's just taking your purchasing power and giving it to DC. So what government spends every year is how much the criminals in Washington, DC take from the rest of the American people and then hand out to their cronies. That's the swamp. That's the corruption. If you're serious about draining the swamp, the only way to do it is to have meaningful cuts in government spending.
This is so true, and Elon Musk, to his credit, has been good on this. He lectured Trump's cabinet, sternly, about the dangers of the debt crisis and bankruptcy and the U.S. going bankrupt. And he talked about that on Rogan just a week and a half ago or so. So Elon has been good on this issue, and there's such a disconnect between that and basically all of MAGA right now.
And of course, as the Doge guys have been, kind of pointing out, there's all this stuff we spend money on that's just insane and can't even be justified. No one even attempts to justify it. And yet in this moment, you have one congressman standing up, and that's who Donald Trump is going to suggest primarying. Not the congressmen who are always pushing toward the next war, lying through their teeth to the American people. Not the congressman like Dan Crenshaw, that retard out there bragging about dead Russians, saber rattling the next conflict as Donald Trump's trying to negotiate it away. Not them. Really, someone explain to me from an America First perspective, someone explain to me how out of all of the congressmen that need to be primaried, the best one is the one that Trump has to go after. Ugh. I mean, listen, it was all of this was entirely predictable, and there's nothing to be surprised about. And I know that people who disagreed with my decision to support Donald Trump in this election will jump on this as, well, what did you expect? This is what you voted for. The truth is that getting Donald Trump in there was still much better than getting Kamala Harris in there. I don't regret my decision to support him, but God damn, if this just isn't pathetic and predictable and awful. And look, by the way, I will just say, I'm sorry, Rob, I'll throw it back to you, but to those people there, it's kind of like I can't win with this crowd, because they'll go, oh, now that Dave supports Donald Trump, he won't criticize Donald Trump on all this shit. Then when I'm exactly the same and I criticize Donald Trump on all the same shit, they go, well, what did you expect? This is what you voted for. It's two separate things, man.
Yeah, and I think Dave's right on the money here. There's such a disconnect between what Doge is doing and what the Congress is doing. And you see the hypocrisy just seep through it all.
We had a binary choice, unfortunately, and this was just so much better. There are many huge positives that came out of Donald Trump being the president. There were nothing but negatives out of Kamala Harris. But I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to argue with you guys on this. I'm not going to pretend there aren't some glaring negatives. And this is just terrible. Well, I could tell you, and again, this isn't scientific or anything like that, but I'm just saying from gauging social media today, it does seem like of the like bigger accounts and kind of the MAGA world, there is just like a huge, like, no, not Thomas Massie, dude. Like, you're just not. Sorry. Like there's people who will go along with Donald Trump for a lot, but there's something. Thomas Massie does have a really loyal base, and I just don't think it's wise politics. Here,
yeah, I think he's right. I've actually seen Scott Adams and Matt Walsh, two of Trump's biggest supporters, come out and say, like, this was a horrible mistake by Trump. So we are seeing some of the big influencers actually kind of push back on Trump on this. So I'll have to give MAGA due on that. At least part of it.
I'm just going to read the post that Donald Trump put up. He said, "Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allow millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primaried, and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney before her historic record-breaking loss. The people of Kentucky won't stand for it. Just watch. Do I have any takers? Anyway, thank you again to the House Freedom Caucus for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again, greater than ever before. Unite and win." That is Donald Trump's post. Yeah, nothing sticks it to the socialists quite like raising government spending. That's really what they oppose. You got him, Donald Trump, by signing another bloated spending bill. You've really bucked things in Washington, D.C. I mean, who could we get this from if we didn't get it from Donald Trump? I mean, besides Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and George Bush and Joe Biden, George H.W. Bush, I'm missing every president of my lifetime, every single one of them. Like, who? I don't know. And even to say, like, I know Thomas Massie did vote for one other CR, and I believe it was like, because he was like, oh, this one actually cut a tiny bit of spending, even though it was like basically a continuation. And he was like, I don't know, it's the first bill I've seen since I've been here that cut any spending.
Yeah, I have some more information on that. I think it was either 2023 or 2022. The one CR that Massie did vote for under Biden failed. It did not ultimately become law, and it cut discretionary spending by 8%. He's explained this on Twitter, and the information on this is out there if you want to look at it. All the CRs that did pass under Biden, Massie did not vote for those. So just to be clear here, Trump is wrong. He hasn't always voted for CRs in the past. And the Liz Cheney thing's just crazy. In what way is Massie like Liz Cheney? Liz Cheney's a blood-soaked neocon, and Massie opposes all the wars and all the Israel lobby and everything.
So I'll at least go with that. And maybe he shouldn't have. But if there's a criticism there, it's from the other direction, that he shouldn't have supported it because it didn't cut enough, not because it was. Well, again, it's just the same old line of like, we need to buy time right now. So like, we can't feel whatever pain government spending might cause right now. We got to kick the can a little bit further. This is sounding a lot more like a typical politician than we'd like
and I
to hear from Donald Trump.
Resolution. I was reading a piece by Stockman, which I gotta always reread those just because of how dense they are.
He's a dense writer. He's the best, though.
From what I understand, this continuing resolution would refund everything that Doge just cut, including USAID. So that just doesn't even that is flagrantly offensive if you even want to claim that you're just trying to get rid of the fraudulent spending. If you want to just pretend like you're reducing spending and that there's some spending that just works against the will of the American people because it's going to NGOs and just crazy shenanigans. And so you just made a big stink about reducing that. why wouldn't at a minimum there be a conversation about, hey, in this new bill, we're not going to refund those things? I mean, that doesn't even make sense.
It's amazing the contrast between Doge and Congress, and this is something we've been talking a bit more about lately.
To highlight, that's the missed opportunity here, is that let them all get voted out of office. Then that they're just that the people that are supposed to keep an eye on the purse are just spending, recklessly spending, even when it's become unpopular and the American people stand against it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and you know, it matters a lot who's sitting in the chair, and at this point, Trump is. And so his move is not to say, let's primary all these other guys, which, by the way, I mean, Trump could move mountains right now if he was really serious about this, getting into the primarying Republicans business. But it's not, it's to primary the one guy who's being good on it.
And this is so right. I think that dismantling U.S. aid is Trump's best accomplishment so far in this administration. And then if you're going to celebrate that and go on to fund it via this CR, that's just insane. It's completely disconnected from the American people. Despite what the corporate media tells you, Doge is really popular, and dismantling U.S. aid and exposing what it was, which is essentially the regime change arm of the CIA, to fund that is just a complete slap in the face to the taxpayer. And Massie's right about that.
That's his idea of what should be done, because he wants to kick the can and not feel the pain on his watch. He wants to be able to brag about how great the economy is doing or whatever. And I'm not even sure, by the way, I don't even think that calculation's correct. I mean, I actually think it would unleash the American economy to have serious cuts in government spending. But yeah, anyway, like you pretty much nailed it. I mean, when it comes to government spending and when it comes to Israel, we just got to accept that Trump's awful on that, and we're going to oppose him on those issues. And it does seem like, you know, I'll just say that it does certainly seem, you know, look, maybe it's not true at all, but you could understand why it has the appearance to people, especially when coupled with the other things that Trump's doing, that it's like, oh, you went after him because he's the guy who opposes this war in Gaza. It does seem like that's one of the things that gets him on the outs with Trump's crew. Of course, a bunch of, you know, the like pathetic right-wing idiots, like, you know, fucking John Podhoretz or Laura Loomer have been talking about how Congressman Massie is an anti-Semite. They've been saying this for months now. He's an anti-Semite because he doesn't want to fund Israel's war. That's depending on the moving definition of anti-Semite. We might get into this a little bit in a little bit, but that's the thing. If you don't want to fund Israel, you're an anti-Semite. If you don't think it's okay to slaughter the women and children in Gaza, you're an anti-Semite.
Yeah, so I think Dave hit the nail on the head there at the end. The whole hullabaloo was brought up over the CR and the debt crisis, but really, I don't think that that's their only qualm with Massie, because Massie's one lone wolf in the Congress. He's one vote, and this passed, I think, with 4 votes to spare. But Massie's been on the record, and that moment with him on Tucker Carlson where he exposed the Israel lobby and AIPAC and having an AIPAC guy, that went viral, and that turned a lot of people in the Trump administration and his most close Zionist allies against him. But I want to hear what you guys think. Do you guys think that this was a horrible miscalculation by Trump, or was this a good idea? And is Massie right, or is Trump right? Let me know in the comments below. And you guys know the motto of Liberty Vault is no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, no more empire. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.